hello, and thanks for watching another episode of ARFCOM News, your 2 or 3 times weekly dose of the finest 2A propaganda. New Zealand cops will stop regulating gun ownership. And that would be great news if that was the whole story, but it's not. The ineffective but near total ban on self-loading firearms remains in effect, and the subjects of Middle-earth will still need to get permission from the government to buy guns. It's just that laypersons will process the applications, presumably allowing the cops to do actual police work. This move is framed as an attempt to curry favor from gun owners, but I can't imagine why anyone would even care. It's not like they cared when the politicians banned their guns in the first place. Barely a third of the banned guns were turned in, and I hope New Zealanders keep that same energy. The state only has such power as we allow it to exercise. It derives its authority from the consent of the governed. So, when the people determine it no longer serves their needs to comply with the frivolous edicts of the rats who run things, they simply stop complying. I remember back in the 90s and 2000s, people legitimately cared about complying with the 922R parts counts. Nowadays, with the ATF's relentlessly fickle attitude about issuing rules, you would be hard-pressed to find a patron of a gun shop or a gun range who can even tell you what the rules are, let alone somebody who actually cares about following them.
It's like a suggestion.
That's the trouble. When the rules are few, simple, and fair, decent people will follow them. As Dr. King said, one has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws.
My husband makes a distinction between legality and morality, Mr. Reynolds.
I've said that myself.
But hey, it would be impossible for us to produce quality 2A propaganda without sponsors. So let's pay some bills. Today's video is sponsored by Hornady.
The 338 Advanced Rifle Cartridge. Purposefully designed for hard-hitting subsonic performance, the 338 ARC delivers 1.5 times more energy than the 300 Blackout subsonic. Featuring the 307-grain Sub-X bullet in the subsonic line and the 175-grain hollow point in Hornady Black. The big little cartridge that packs a punch. The 338 ARC from Hornady.
Representative Andrew Clyde just sent an open letter to Pam Bondi urging her to stop enforcing the NFA. Some people are making this out to be a really big deal, and I can kind of understand why they're acting that way. Clyde and 10 other politic-critters are basically saying, hey, when Congress passed this big bloated spending bill and set the transfer tax to 0, it was our intent to repeal the NFA's registration and transfer requirements, so you need to stop doing that. Oh, and you should, also really stop defending NFA cases in court. So if, and that is a very big if, the ATF and the DOJ weren't actively hostile to our rights, this might be exciting, but the letter has no legal authority. Clyde can't make the ATF stop jackbooting. He can only make the argument that this was the intent of Congress. But let's say, just for funsies, that the ATF wasn't a rogue terrorist agency intent on fighting tooth and nail for the opportunity to ruin American lives for having a barrel that's a quarter inch too short.
Short, he was sweaty. Wait a second, that's the guy.
Could the ATF realistically just stop enforcing the NFA and start arguing against it in court? The answer is yes, kind of. They certainly have the legal authority, particularly considering the circumstances and the pending suits. It would be perfectly legitimate for them to stop prosecuting short-barrel NFA cases and to start issuing briefs to courts explaining why the NFA is unconstitutional. There would be political consequences, naturally, but these people never face any real personal consequences beyond getting dismissed from their position by the next administration, and they're already wealthy with no concerns about paying the bills if they lose their jobs. Plus, they're likely to get canned by the next administration no matter what they do.
Plus, he's got a great can.
There is a revolving door immunity that shields almost all high-level officials from real fallout. When talking heads warn of massive consequences, what they really mean is people on TV will argue, lawyers will bill hours, and the next guy will undo it. But that's all unicorn farts and fairy magic, because we're talking about Pam Bondi's DOJ. Just last month, she begged the Supreme Court not to consider Rush versus U.S., which challenges the SBR portion of the National Firearms Act. Now, I know I've been beating this drum a lot lately.
Hey,
right, you can't just hit a drum. You have to beat the shit out of it.
But Scam Blondie remains largely hostile to our rights, and if you don't believe me, I'd like to direct your attention to this tracker hosted by News 2A. I'll include a link down there in the doobly-doo, as is our custom, but it gives you a chronological account of all the stuff Blondie has done in relation to gun rights, going all the way back to her 2018 support for red flag laws. It's not exclusively bad, but, well, look for yourself. And when you're finished getting good and outraged, I want you to please call the Don himself and tell him to whip Blondie into shape or show her the door. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is trying to revive his lawsuit against the state fair in the city of Dallas. You'll remember that back in August of last year, Paxton sued the state fair and Dallas because they banned guns, which violates state law because the fair was held on public property. Texas law explicitly allows CPL holders to carry guns on public property, which is not remotely as based as admitting they lack the authority to prohibit the bearing of arms in the first place, but yeah, it's pretty cool for Texas. The state fair in the city of Dallas argued that because it was fair organizers, not city employees, that made the policy, that made it perfectly legal. Despite that being the dumbest reasoning, since that old guy at the bar tried to tell me how good birdshot is for self-defense, last June that suit was dismissed by Dallas County District Judge Emily Tobolowski. Nailed it. She didn't bother to give any reasoning as to her decision, so we can only assume her legal reasoning was something insightful like, guns are icky. But because she didn't offer any reasoning, Paxton argues that's a real good reason for the appellate court to at least pick up the case and, well, give him a good reason. If you needed any more reason to hate government drones, South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson penned an open letter to a state representative making excuses for the Department of Social Services policy, which requires foster parents to keep guns unloaded and locked up. In other words, useless for defense.
That's because we want it that way.
Now, I didn't check the numbers on this, but unless South Carolina has an extremely improbable surplus of foster families, they really have no business even trying to infringe in this manner. And the state's head lawyer really ought to know that when the government does an infringing, that breaks the big law called the Constitution. But instead, he wrote 12 pages of lame excuses, which you are welcome to peruse for yourself. Link in the doobly-doo, of course. And now, for your moment of zen. Hello, friend. Do you like pews and pew-related things? Would you like to help us keep delivering you pure American pew propaganda at the low price of free? We literally couldn't pay the bills without our sponsors, so do us a solid and get yourself something nice from them. You deserve it. I love you.